Obviously a bit chilly there.
Good.
I think your internet's pretty weak, Andrew, wherever you are situated. I don't know if you're able to find a better spot for your internet. You're sort of breaking up a bit. And yeah, so welcome to all those joining us on Facebook Live. Andrew's going to move around a bit. We're going to have a really cool conversation. You'll see I've got my special shirt on in preparation. Yeah, we're going to have a really cool chat today. I think he's going to join us again now. And yeah, I think for those of you joining on Facebook, I'm going to try my best to watch and get your comments and yeah, answer as best as I can on that side. To the rest of you, today you're going to probably see a more philosophical side of myself. I'm generally quite humorous and play around quite a lot. Today I think it's going to be a little bit more philosophical side of me. And we've got some really cool questions and a really cool chat around running 100 miles. And actually a big challenge we want to put out to all of you guys. Andrew and I have been in discussions the last 2 weeks about what we're going to do on our side. And yeah, I really want you guys to join in on that. Yeah, and maybe while Andrew is getting in, I think the big thing, I think we've all lost during this last little bit of COVID-19 is really that dream. You know, I think we all have a dream in one way or another, whether it's a work dream, a business dream, a venture that we're going into. We sort of, maybe I'm wrong, but from what I know, a lot of us, we sort of live in that place where we have dreams that we aspire to and we work towards. And my other part of my job is I am a pastor. And so I obviously get to see a lot of people and a lot of questions. And what I've been noticing over the last while is just this real sense of hopelessness as people are almost like they've had dreams for this year. They've had desires. I've seen on the Comrades marathon page throughout social media, it's like this desperation and this frustration that's starting to come on. And a good friend of mine and I had a chat a while ago, and he spoke to me a little bit about emotional fatigue. And that's something that I think a lot of us are going through at the moment, is this incredible emotional fatigue, because there's nothing solid that we can put our feet on. There's nothing like substantial that we can aim towards or build towards. And really that's what tonight is about for us. You know, like we want to have that conversation about, yeah, let's dream again. You know, like let's start living big. Let's start having those crazy dreams. And the reason why we do endurance and the reason why we do these crazy events is because I think we are those type of people that live by dreams. We're those type of people that have these big goals. Or maybe you started Comrades, you know, and it was the first time this year for you. I see Andrew's just connecting here again. And maybe while he connects, let me just say this. So you're probably on via Trailshed or you're on via Fighting 100. And I just want to say this, if you do have any comments, please pop them. I have got some questions already from some of the guys. So I'll try my best to ask as many of those as I can. Let's just see where Andrew is. I think he's still trying to connect there. But how it works is if you're on the webinar side of things, I can see the bunch of you are on the webinar, is you can ask us a question directly. And there's two ways you can do it. There's a chat function on the webinar. So if you just scroll over your screen, you'll see there's a little Q&A, but there's also chat. So you can use both of those options. The chat is probably the quicker way I'll see you. If you pop it there, the Q&A, I have to hover over my screen and then I'll see the Q&A section light up from my side. So I'll be able to then answer those questions for you. And then if you are joining us on Facebook and maybe you have some guys you want to get on a challenge, or you know some guys are battling, maybe they were wanting to run Comrades or had some sort of goal for this year, and that's sort of been taken away from them. Why don't you just maybe tag them in on this post, or if they're on your WhatsApp group, send them a link, get them onto this chat, because we're going to chat about dreams today. We're going to chat about going big. We're going to chat about just, getting back something that this COVID has taken away from us. And I remember when I first like the lockdown happened, I was almost a little bit like, couldn't believe that this was going on. I was like, what the heck is going on here? And for me, you know, I mean, you guys that do follow me, you know, I had that whole series Fighting 100, and that was sort of my thing for the year. I'm a creative. I love creating content. I love telling stories. It's just part of who I am. And I had sort of like gone down this whole like, okay, fighting 100, it's a crazy dream to be able to try run it and chase down Bill Rowan, which is sort of out of my depth, but to give it a go anyway. And I think the reason we dream and the reason we want to do these big things and big goals is because they're impossible. And it inspires us to become something more than what the world tells us we can, or even what we sometimes believe we can do. We believe certain things about ourselves. And I remember before when I was first training for comrades, like I had this real belief inside of me that I would never, ever be able to do that. And I remember running, like when I started running, I'd run one light pole and I'd have to stop, and then I'd like pant, and then I'd run to the next one, run to the next one, run to the next one. I was plagued with injuries and all these sort of things were happening. And yeah, I remember this crazy belief inside of me that I would never, ever be able to run the comrades, because for me in KZN, that was like the big thing, was comrades marathon. And I got caught up in the Giba Gabblers, which is the guys who run in Giba Gorge, and there's a guy by the name of Alistair Lowe there, really amazing human being. And he took me on our first runs, and while I was lagging at the back, I remember how you would hang with me at the back, but there was something that was lit inside of me that I can only explain as like this incredible dream and desire to do more than I ever could. And that experience of running actually changed my whole life for good. This belief that I could do more than I ever dreamed of, this belief that I could just conquer more than what I believed inside myself. So that's what we really want to chat about today, is getting around this idea of what COVID has taken from us, from our businesses. And Andrew is not going to say this, but I'll say it for him. But I mean, you think about it, he's an event organizer. I mean, that's what he does. That's his bread and butter. That's how he makes his bucks. It's been taken off the cards for him. All his employees, I'll let him answer a bit of those questions later, but like everything's been taken away from him. And I think it's a really good picture of what COVID has done to not just the country, but it's, I think, done to us as individuals. I think so many of us have had dreams and desires and things we've wanted to do. Maybe it was comrades, maybe it was the Karkloof 100, maybe it was some other event that's been taken away. And that's sort of been the thing that you've been working towards. And what I found when I got into lockdown, I had to very quickly come up with a dream. I had to very quickly come up with some sort of idea that was going to keep me ticking over, because almost straight away I was like, what's the point? Like I could see, I know comrades weren't saying anything about it at the time, but I could see that this wasn't going to happen. So for me, it was the 24-hour run. And it was, I initially started off with I think I was going to do a 42K in my garden. And then I saw Benny Roo. Oh, there we go. Andrew's coming back there. I see his visual. There you are. There we go. That seems like you're back on.
No, I finally found another internet connection. I think it's just, how it happens, how it rolls. Sometimes it works, it doesn't.
No, it's fine. I've been keeping him entertained. I've been telling them a little bit about the story of how we all, well, for me, what's sort of been happening during lockdown. And, like I was sort of saying, like the one thing that was quite significant is that the one thing COVID has taken from us is this ability to dream. Like all of us this year, you start 2020 and you've got these dreams and you've got these desires and you've got these things you want to do. And all of a sudden, you can't do them anymore. They've been taken away from us. So I was just sort of chatting a little bit about that, but I think we will get into that a bit more. And so just maybe the house rules for some of the guys here. If you are joining us on the webinar and you want to ask questions, there's a chat function if you hover over your screen, or there's a questions and answers one. You can pop there. I got an email in, which I will discuss just now. And then if you're on our Facebook page, I'm going to try really hard. I don't know if you have your phone in front of you, Andrew, another phone.
I do, yeah.
Would you be able to maybe monitor the Trailshed comments? I'll monitor Fighting 100. And then I think together we could probably cover any questions that come in on social.
Absolutely.
So maybe just start. So yeah, I got Andrew on today. My first 100 miler was the Karkloof 100, where I was officially in last position. And it was also Andrew's first 100 miler that he ran as event organizer. So maybe just tell the guys a little bit about yourself about KZN trail running, your business, obviously, which is non-existent at this point with COVID, in terms of you putting on events in KZN. But maybe tell a little bit us the story of how KZN Trail Run was birthed and your journey up to creating a 100-miler.
Yeah, I suppose that's right. The 100-miler was always the long-term goal, the big dream. For some reason, it's the ultimate distance when it comes to trail running. It's far enough to really, really test you. I think you have to have a lot of ducks in a row and be super, you can say organized, but maybe not necessarily organized in conventional fashion. But, you know, you need to be able to stick things out for a long time to finish a 100-miler. But let's go right back to the beginning. And where did KZR start? How did we get into all of this? And I come from a bit of an environmental background, and I was working for the Duzi Umgeni Conservation Trust, that's DUCT, back in 2007. And someone asked us, could we please assist getting some people through the valley from Durban to Maritzburg? And we worked in that valley, so we were quite familiar with it. And we said, yeah, sure, no problem. Took a few buckies and followed about 6 or 7 people through, kind of just directing them through the valley on trails, of course, and trail running really just emerging at that stage. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed just like getting involved and doing that. So my work was focused on the health of the river. And we're doing a lot of alien vegetation clearing and that sort of stuff, community relationships, etc. So we're well positioned to operate in that area for anything really. And then 2009, October, we did our first short course series of trail runs. And that's what really kicked off what we call KZN trail running today. So just over 10 years in operation, really. We officially became KZN TR or KZN trail running in 2012. That's when the website was launched. And yeah, it's just grown in different phases, and slowly but surely it's grown. And while we still remain very environmentally centered, we have always kept that close to our hearts. We don't actually do any environmental consulting per se anymore. We are completely in trail running. So yes, you don't have business at the moment putting on events. We had to just adapt like everybody, and we're putting on a few virtual things. We've had the garden series, which was an absolute hit out the blocks. I think then that did provide a little bit of kind of incentive and motivation just to get out and do some exercise. As time's gone on, then we got into the radius run, which is just gathering each Sunday to run around your 5Ks. But yeah, I do agree that it's really hard to sometimes keep that motivation and keep focused. What are we running for? And COVID has gnawed away at that for some people, especially kind of if your big event was ripped away from you. So it's tested that in a big way. And yeah, we're just in a very strange phase at the moment because we are event centered. So if you can't hold an event and you're event centered, but that's kind of the brief of KZNTR. I always actually say my joke about how KZNTR started, and I'm completely non-political, but it's a funny joke in that I say it was Julius Malema who we actually have to thank. And the reason I say that is because if he hadn't objected to comrades changing from the 16th of June, because it was Youth Day, then that group who wanted to run through the valley from Durban to Pietermaritzburg would have never approached us at DUCT, because they would have just used comrades on that 16th of June as their run, which was part of this mega triathlon that you then got on your bike. You did the Freedom Challenge through to the start of the Berg River Canoe Marathon down in the Cape, and then you paddled the marathon. And these things timed very nicely with one another. So the change of the date of comrades from the 16th of June, which is obviously Freedom Day, to that date in May, and now it's shifted back to June. But that's what made them approach us to do this run through the valley. And if that hadn't happened, all of those little chains things wouldn't have really instigated it. And I don't know if I would have landed up where I am in terms of driving trail running in KZN and South Africa. Yeah.
Jeez, that's quite amazing. Like you talk about those chain of events. I had a funny one happen to me today where I went out. A customer was changing his shoes out in Cato Ridge, so I thought, let me just drive it out and go say hi and drop it off with her. And she said no, she lives in a house just around the corner. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. And I asked, what house exactly? And I started describing the house for her. And what ended up happening she is actually staying in the same house that my late grandfather used to live in before he passed away. I mean, how crazy is that? That she would order then from an online store that we run now in my late grandfather's house. So it's like these are crazy things that happen in our lives, and yeah, it's amazing. And so you went, okay, so KZN TR starts, and interesting enough, I also studied geography and environmental management. I don't know if that's what you studied.
Yeah, environmental science. I specialized in like plant-animal interactions, to tell the truth.
Okay. So why 100 miles? So for you personally, but then also maybe as KZN TR.
Yeah, so yeah, your question of why did we end up at Karkloof 100 miler, and it was always in the back of my head. It was obvious from when I got into the trail running scene and started to investigate a little bit more that, you know, these 100 milers were about and a big thing overseas and growing. I mean, UTMB, I think, started in 2008, 2009, and now it's one of the biggest. So, yeah, you know, it was all at the same, the growth overseas, I think, was happening at the same time. And obviously we were watching YouTube and aware of what was going on. So it was a natural thing that the 100 mile became this objective. And at the time, there weren't actually trail 100 milers in South Africa, because Addo came and went for a while. Addo was there in the early 2000s, but then the 100 miler was suspended for a year. So I literally don't think they had enough participants. And then it came back, what was it, about 4 years ago. So when we thought we were always thinking about, and then just the opportunity came to us with the timing was right. Jack Davis, who's a co-director of the race, had run overseas. He had gone and run Leadville and had an experience there, and was able to convey a lot more about what the culture was like and what. And when those things started to pull together, and we're like, well, let's do it rather than wait. We literally put it on the calendar for 2017. So we didn't really make an announcement. The first time people saw it was when we released the 2017 calendar towards the end of 2016. And there it was, you know, Karkloof 160 Ks. And yeah, I think the reason 100 miler is so, why it's got the reputation it does, is because it takes, anyone can finish one, but it takes all of you to finish it. So, you know, it truly, anyone can. Like, it doesn't, you don't have to be quick, you just have to be persistent. But to be persistent, it's going to take all of you, and it's going to test everything. So I think that's, you know, with all due respect to like the shorter ultra distances, and I know there's a lot of comrades runners probably watching this. I'm a comrades runner myself, having completed 8 of them. So it's in my blood. My dad ran it, 20 of them. But what is the difference between the two? At the end of the day, comrades, you're out there pretty much only during daylight hours, other than right at the start. You've got a lot of people around you all the time. You know, it's just a completely different test of one's will to keep pursuing. Obviously, for comrades to keep pursuing is a massive challenge within itself, and I don't want to undermine that at all. I've been in comrades where I wanted to quit in a way more than what I've wanted to quit when I'm in the 100 milers. So they have their own challenges. I think it really just kind of strips everything, and you can't fake it. You be out there for the right reasons, and there's no faking it. You really got to give it your all to get there, and the reward for that is obviously massive.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how it got there. That's why we always wanted to be at that pinnacle point. It was always going to be our pinnacle race. Hey?
Yeah. So for me, like, it was interesting because I was just saying to the guys before when you were battling a little bit there with your reception, is I was always like, when I started running, I battled to even believe that I could run the comrades, like, or even never mind the comrades, a marathon. And it was actually my introduction to trail, to actually KZN TR in a large way, in a lot of your events in the early days, where we started, like, you know, you enter a distance that you're like, oh my word, I'm never going to get through this. And I actually Karkloof 100 was one of the races in KZNTR that I came last. And there's another race that I actually came last of yours that I didn't even end up on the scoreboard. I finished so late that the guy sitting on the computer, I think was just like, oh, I've already shut down my computer. You're not going to be on the scoreboard. And that was, yes, you got it. 1,000 hills. Check, you don't forget, eh? So I've actually come last in 2 of your races. But I think even that race, I think was quite significant for me, that first time I came last in that 1,000 hills race, is I had some massive struggles through it. And it was the first time I got to those like dark holes that you face, obviously a lot of those in a 100-mile race, where I had to start pushing through those like dark patches to get into this like belief that actually I can do more than I think I can do. And I think that's so significant about, especially a 100-mile race. I think Comrades is a beautiful race in its own in terms of our culture. The vibe on Comrades, it's just something that you can't explain to someone unless you've run the race. But I think,
and that's why everyone who runs really at some point should run Comrades. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I really, yeah.
Well, what I like about the Karkloof 100 is that Comrades is situated perfectly for it to be one of your long runs or your long training runs towards Karkloof. And was that thought out or?
No, it was. We were looking for the right time of the year, and Comrades was something we considered right from the beginning on every single bigger race that we wanted to. And I think what's happened in KZN in particular, but maybe Johannesburg as well, or around the country, is that the first half of the year, a lot of people start focusing on road. They might do some trail as cross training and complementary style training, but then the second half of the year they tend to dedicate to trail, and that's a common thing in KZN, and 1,000 Hills being that turnover at the end of July. You've run Comrades, you've had a month off to recover, and they will come back for 1,000 Hills, and then it's trail till the end of the year. So that's kind of just how things have naturally worked out, and so it was obvious to put it in the second half of the year, and we're also looking at the other races, but it was no accident that was in fact the case.
Yeah. Okay. So we in a situation, obviously in South Africa, we've got quite a lot of disappointed people, and rightfully so. I think a lot of us, whether it's business, whether it's personal goals or whatever, a lot of that's been taken away from us. And I saw you made a post, I think it was 2 weeks ago, about a challenge that you wanted to put out there. And when you did that, there was just something inside of me that, like a fire that lit inside of me. Like I just thinking, like, so much has been taken away from us. It's time for us to put those disappointments and work towards something. So what is the challenge that I'll let you explain it. And so I know I'm part of that.
Absolutely. I mentioned Jack Davis is co-director of Karkloof 100. So the other day, we actually just made him full-on director. He's taken over the whole show, which allows me to just take one step back and actually stand on that start line and participate. So, that's it. I've decided to run the race myself and be a participant as opposed to be on the race organizing side, which is obviously like super, super exciting to be able to do participate in KZNTR's pinnacle race. So it's a life's work coming together in many ways. And I think that that 25 September date, there's a very good chance that the race will take place in a new COVID style format. I mean, just the way things are moving and what we're seeing, we may well have to avoid the crowds and the bunching and all of that. But there are ways by then, and that's very likely to take place. Worst case scenario, I just thought to myself, I want to commit to something here, and I'm going to run 100 miles come the 25th of September, even if I have to run it in, loops on the local trail as more of a virtual type race, which we've become quite used to. But I just didn't believe that would be the case by the time. But anything can happen. We know that we're in an environment that we've got to be super fluid in, and we're not quite sure what's going to come of tomorrow. But we do know that we can run now, we can train now. And partly it's about adapting to learn to train without this like definite on the 25th of September, I'm going to start on that start line. It's a new mental adaptation, which I think ultra runners all are very good at doing, because you do that all the time when you're on on the road, on the trail, you're constantly reassessing your body and reassessing your goals and reassessing where you are. And it's almost like we've got to go into that mode all the time now, because goalposts are changing. But it's about keeping fit and respecting kind of our bodies and the distance and the culture of what we're doing. And I think that those have to be our new focuses and our new driving forces, and we've got to just adapt with the times, so that come 25th of September, you're not going on the start line going, why didn't I train and start then? Because if I did it then, look what I could be experiencing right now. You've got to be ready when you come in.
Yeah,
I'm challenging you as well, Shaun. I think a bit of fighting 100 versus trail Booth. Even if it turns out one of those situations that it's just you versus me on the trail. Obviously, that's not what we hope for at all. But we've got to get creative environment. So the challenge is specifically to you, because I think you've come last, and I don't think you'll come last again. And if you have a great day, I know you'll smash me, but I think I'll be there in the background to take any advantage of weakness there.
I think the funny thing between Andrew and I, so Andrew's the patient runner, so he's really good at it's a long day, paces himself well. I had this problem where I want to go for gold, and I'll smash out there, and then halfway I sort of limp my way back in. So that'll actually be quite a fun challenge. But I think in everything you said there, Andrew, what I really love about this is that what we're doing is we're pinning a date, and we're saying, you know what, come whatever, of September, I'm training towards running a 100-mile race, and that's a definite foot that I can put down, and I can say I am doing this thing. And I think that's the challenge, and that's what got me, Andrew. It's like, I think with everything that's happening in COVID at the moment, it's like there's no definite. It's like maybe or how or whatever, but we can commit as a bunch of ultra runners, and I'm hoping that some of the comrades runners, we're going to talk about this just now, but would come across and say, hey, this is something we're willing to commit to this year, to one, say like, bugger you, COVID, and two, just to put something down and say, we're going to do this together. We're going to go for it. We're going to train towards something and get some of our dreams back that we've lost.
Absolutely. No, you've nailed it there, Shaun. And 100 miles, 160 odd kilometers, 161 kilometers is an incredibly far way. Like it is, and for some people a bit unfathomable. So there's of course the 50 miler as well, which starts roughly 12 hours after on the Saturday morning, and you've got an 18-hour limit there. So some people going well into the night, which is also a fantastic challenge and brings out a lot of those things. And for a lot of people, it's acted as a stepping stone to the 100-miler. So I suppose my message to people is if they're like, well, are you guys mad? Because that's what most people kind of say.
Yeah.
But we're not. And maybe the stepping stone is just the 50 miler, or still a fantastic challenge in itself. So if your comrade's dream is shattered, well, Karkloof 50 miler might just be your thing.
Yeah, and what I like about that, Andrew, is that I think for everyone there's something specific we can train towards. So we can say, come 25th or 26th, would also be on the Saturday, obviously, for the 50 miler. We got something that we are going to do. So if the race is there, awesome. Maybe it's a different format and it's going to be some sort of COVID format. We're there. But right now, we're committing to say, yes, we are in to train for this, to put the hard miles in and get ourselves to the start line. Because that's really what it is. Even comrades, I think the biggest part of comrades is getting to the start line. It's getting through those 1,000 kilometers of training. It's getting on the road when you don't want to get on the road. It's making those hard calls. And I think for the race in September, we got to make that call now. We can't make it in a month's time or 2 months' time. We got to say this week, next week, okay, we're going to start our training.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I started my training effectively on the 1st of May. So I'm like 3 weeks in, still trying to drop the weight that I put on in the first few weeks. You think 4 weeks of eating, then 3 weeks of running kind of might balance out, but it hasn't dropped 1 kilogram. So I'm just waiting for it to do that. But that sometimes takes a little bit of time. But exactly, I think what's the date today? It's the 27th of May. There we go. We're exactly 4 months out, essentially. So, I think a lot of people do have some fitness in them, having lined up Comrades or another goal. And 4 months, if you're a runner who's run Comrades, is certainly enough to run either the 50 or the 100 miler. My first 100 miler, I came from a fairly unfit position in early January to run by the end of April. So just over 3 months. And went from, probably my heaviest ever almost. I've also pressed that 100 kg mark. I think it was 101, 102. And I ran the race at about 89. So, transformation. It was, I had a lot of ultra. By then I'd run the 8 Comrades. I had ultra experience, but it was then taking on that next step. It only took me 3 months to prepare for it. And so I think that's the message is if you've got a good history behind you, you've done a lot of ultra stuff, that jump doesn't necessarily take a whole year to prepare. If you've never done any ultra, well, then you've got a much bigger journey to that start line that you talk about, which essentially is what it's about. I think each time I've stood on that start line, I felt like that's the moment where it's a real moment of, that's a gift essentially, isn't it? You've got there fit and healthy and you're able to start. And that's also a thought that carries one in those tough moments. So each time you get to stand on that start line of an ultra race, essentially, I think you just let the rest happen. You've done everything else. Now it's just time to let it happen is often my approach in those situations.
Yeah. So I had a question come in on email, and I think it's a valid question, maybe a valid fear is the right word, where the guy was saying, it takes 1,000 kilometers worth of training to get Comrades fit and to finish. And he was sort of worried, like with 4 months, is there enough time to prepare for a 100-mile race? So I know you did the one side. So it's like the question is, how much have you been running? So if you are a runner, then I would say yes. If you're not a runner, then I'd say maybe look at the 50-miler for the first half of it. But the one thing I realized, so even training towards Comrades this year, is I was still in my training process. I mean, I was probably only fit to run about 60 Ks. And then obviously we had the Garden Series come. And for me, it was like, oh, flip, I'm just going to run for 24 hours in my garden, and ended up clocking in 130 kilometers. So even in that process, like I thought I could only do 60, but I was really what in a 100-mile race, a big part of it is the mental. So let's talk a little bit about training versus the mental aspect of running a 100-mile race. Are you still there, Andrew? Okay, I think I've lost Andrew there a little bit. I'm sure he'll come back in now. Let's just give him 2 seconds. Well, I'll have to fill you in on my side. Okay, well, while he waits, maybe let me start chatting a little bit about that aspect of training. So often we underestimate ourselves and the value of our training that we put in. So like if you've been training towards Comrades already and you've put in, I don't know, say 400 or 500 kilometers, those 400 or 500 kilometers, you've developed muscles, you've developed your system. Let's see here, not having Comrades might benefit Karkloof 100 performance because Comrades take so much out of the legs and forces, Colin, you're a flipping legend. I should actually, Colin, I'm gonna put you on the panel here, my bud. So have you got your camera? If you got your camera, you're coming on. Colin is a 100-mile runner and himself, so I'm going to quickly promote him to the panelist. Well, let's see if he comes across. That'll be so cool. So Colin is also, he's a 100-mile guy, runs for Ultra and is a legend. So let's see if he comes across to answer a little bit of those questions around training. Let's see. Colin. Okay, I see. Anyways, well, I'll continue talking along the lines of what Colin said. So I remember even on my first, panelists, let's see here. Colin is coming in. So Colin, if you just put your mic on and your camera on, the rest of us will be able to see you, which would be pretty cool to have you in the conversation. But what Colin was saying, I remember when I finished my first, it was a down run Comrades. My legs were so shattered. There you are, Colin. Hi, my bud.
Yeah, it's Conrad.
Conrad, how you doing?
Hello. Finding you. I can't see my own face, but that's all right.
So tell me, okay, so your comment was, so comrades, you might benefit Karkloof performance because comrades take so much out of the legs.
Yeah, it's just that I think that one has to focus on a specific race. I ran the Karkloof last year, and I was very surprised, pleased with my performance at 59 years of age. It was 26 and a half hours. And my whole training from the beginning of the year was focused on that, and that is to just run distance. So I think if, like it seems that you would have liked to go for Bull Rowan, then that would maybe not have been that wise if you want to do the 100 mile as well.
Absolutely. So that's interesting because I hadn't sort of planned for the Karkloof 100. I was sort of like going to see what happened with comrades this year, because obviously I was going to give it a real tonk. And yeah, obviously since that's been cancelled, it was just like, well, flip, this is the perfect opportunity for us to commit to something like this. So tell me a little bit about your Karkloof 100. It was obviously your first one. What were your impressions of what happened?
Well, I was. It was totally new to me. The thing that I didn't know was I want peaks for this race, because with comrades with my comrades I did a sort of bit of a double hump peak, but for Karkloof I didn't know. So I read in Trail magazine. It was I can't remember now who the coach is, but there was an article on 100 mile. 100 mile. Do you still hear me?
Yeah, a little bit. It's breaking up a little bit.
Okay, as you see a message here that my speaker is not working. Then I read the article in Trail magazine, and it explained a three peak, let's say 3 peaks of maybe 20 hours a week in those peaks, but almost nothing in between those peaks, and that worked wonderfully. So the 3 peaks that I did, then I included long races in those peaks,
yes.
and then get a good rest the weeks in between, and that worked very well for me.
And then tell me about the race itself. What did it do for you?
Well, it was just fantastic. But the big thing was that it was teamwork. It was, normally after a race, you feel, let's say you run comrades, it's like an individual achievement, and so that's it, euphoria, and then that's gone. You've done it, you've achieved that, and that's it. It's just yourself. But I had the 2 paces alternating from the turning point, and my wife was there at the aid stations, and she supported me just so that I can get quickly. She's already spied out where the toilets are and so on, and get me going. And so that makes sure that they do take my record my number and so on. And it was just so good to celebrate with the team. Afterwards, we just had a drink there. It was 11 o'clock at night on the Saturday, and it was just so nice to celebrate with the team.
Absolutely. So, question: are you in for this year?
No, I'm not in for it this year. I'm actually quite extreme in my distances, because I've done the 100 miler, but I'm also a cross country runner. So this year was going to be a cross country race, seeing I've turned 60 and I'm now young in my age group in cross country, which is
oh, lovely.
So that was my goal, but now I'm going to get back into trail, and maybe I will not do a 100 mile again. I've turned 60 now. I've done that, but we'll see.
Colin, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate you.
Okay.
Let me just put you back quickly. Thanks so much, buddy. So just to tackle that thing around training, I had a good, obviously last week I chatted with Claude Eckstein, and he's been coaching me for a couple of years around our training. And I think the one big mindset we have is, it's like we train as if we want to win the race. So we go out there, we smash it like these interval sessions, and we end up getting injured. And the concern around the email that I got in was that thing around injury. So how do you stay injury free? And I think there's two different ways to approach it. So I've always gone low mileage, high intensity. And what I mean by that is my mileage, or the amount of mileage I do to complete an endurance event, is quite low compared to what a lot of suggestions are out there. But what I do is my interval sessions, which are on Tuesdays. On Thursdays, I do hills. And then Saturdays, I do long runs, and they do have some interval sections or tempo sections. So I'll do like a long run on a Sunday, and that's when my legs are the tired, because you've done a long run on Saturday, you followed it by a long run on Sunday, and then the last 5Ks, you do a tempo. So you're belting with really sore legs, you're hitting those last 5Ks. So, but my mileage is not really high. So I think the max I would sort of go on a weekly basis was around about 70Ks. And a lot of these guys are saying you need to do like 120 plus kilometers for a 100-mile race, and I do disagree with that. If you're a busy person, there is another way of doing that, and that's high intensity, low mileage. And then on race day, there's a very different mentality that you've got to take towards a 100-mile race. And I really hope that some of you guys commit to this challenge. Why? Because it's something that's solid. It's something that we can aim towards. And maybe you've never dreamed big like this before. So maybe it's even just for you. It's to say, okay, you know what, mentally, I'm going to attempt something bigger than I ever believed I could do. And that in itself is so huge. You know, it's such a massive step. And then on the day, when you get there, it's just really trust in what you've done. You've got 36 hours to get to the end. And if you're going to run out like you've only got 12 hours to get to the end, you really are going to pay for it in the latter halves of the race. And that sort of happened to me in 2017 when I did my first Karkloof 100, and I ended up in last place. I ran out really hard. I think I finished. I came past the halfway in about 10 hours and some change. And I turned at the aid station. I felt really good. Got past 100Ks, felt really good. Got to Bush Willow, and when I got to Bush Willow, that's where the wheels really fell off for me. And I had to really get everything inside of me to get through that finish line. Andrew, you back with us?
Yeah, man. Sorry about that. You know,
it's fine. Actually, it was quite cool. There was a panelist, Conrad van Berg, who ran Karkloof last year. And so I pulled him across onto the panel, and he had a little chat with us as well. We just sort of been tackling this thing around training and you know, like how much training do you have to do for it? And I've sort of been saying there's two different elements to it. One is you can go high mileage, or you can go high intensity, low mileage, which will also get you. And then on the day is to have the right mentality. Like, actually got 36 hours to get across the finish line. You don't have to sprint. You can take your time. You can have breaks at aid stations for an hour if you want. You know, you can really take your time to get to the end of that race.
Absolutely. You know, just we tend to compare to comrades, obviously, in our culture, because it's the biggest ultra race. And so to compare there, when I've run comrades, I've always had that time goal in mind, like everybody. And you feel like you can't really let go at all. There's no reprieve from keeping those minutes per K, and you're watching falling behind or getting ahead. Am I banking? Am I falling behind to get my medal? While that mentality, obviously, if you're aiming for like a silver buckle or something, might creep in, but in general, on the 100-mile events on the trail, you know, you're actually walking for a substantial part of the race. And I think that people misconceive that a little bit as well. They think they have to run the entire 100 miles, which is obviously like not impossible, but hard. So very, very few elite. It's really only for the elites that type of running all the way. But the point is that you've got a whole lot more time. But on the training element, you know, you can. There are those two approaches. I'm much more of a fan for the 100 miles of spending the time out there, doing those long hard yards, building up that endurance slowly. You can go that high interval, and I think that must come into your training for sure, but my personal approach is to take a lot of time over those long hard yards, because I believe they also develop you in the mental capacity of what it's like to be out there for many hours through one night, perhaps even a second night, play around with a bit of sleep deprivation, prepare yourself physically and mentally together at the same time.
Okay, so I just want to quickly hit one or two questions here from the viewers. So I got the one question is around obviously the 50 mile. I know we've covered that, but maybe we answered. Would there be a 50 mile option? And then the Karkloof training camp, is that still going to take place, or would that be cancelled? And I know we sort of chatted about that. Maybe your thoughts?
Yeah, so look, it's scheduled for mid-July there. And, maybe we'll be in level 2 by then, and level 2 may allow for this type of recreational gathering to take place in a certain way. I mean, we have seen religious centers are now allowed to gather in certain ways, in small crowds, and that might come into sports and recreational activities as well. We certainly hope it will, in which case we'll be ready to fire out the blocks immediately the moment they give us the go-ahead. We don't need too much lead time. We're not like a factory that needs a whole lot of starting up. We can go quickly, but realistically, maybe not. But then, of course, there's this virtual world. So we envisage a virtual training camp where people will be able to do sessions, and we'll bring in some professionals and some guys who know a lot about strength or nutrition. We can have little webinars just like this, and just discuss the training and where we are and different parts of the course, and really analyze it. So the training camp really just takes on a new form. If we can't do it physically, we do it virtually.
Yeah, actually what I like about that, Andrew, is that it actually includes people a lot more. So like I even think of last year's training camps, like a lot of them I wanted to go out to, but realistically, because I've got such a busy life, I actually just couldn't. And I ended up, like sort of doing my own thing. And I sort of missed that element where I think the one real positive around COVID, and especially this sort of thing, is that we can do that, is we can do this together online. And we can say, hey, as a group, let's bring a professional in to have a conversation around training, around nutrition, around my run that I've just done now. I went out on Saturday and I had a really bad race, and sort of discussed that sort of stuff.
Definitely. And one thing that happened with, say, the garden series towards the end is a couple of people who had never participated in KZNTR events were like, no, please keep something like this going afterwards, because it allows us to participate on an event that we otherwise definitely wouldn't be able to. There's no doubt that will have an effect down the line. I mean, I dream of the different scenarios we might end up on race day. And like, let's say we all had to run completely individually. Setting up a few live cameras and streams and chat rooms along the way that people will be able to check in and check out, and still have their family and friends follow them through those types of channels. So I think what we're learning in these spaces is that there's new ways to things, and some of those new ways have really good advantages. And a training camp where you don't have to travel to, it doesn't cost you that accommodation and all of that, but you still get a large portion of, nothing beats being on the trail to train for it, but you still could get a really cool experience.
Yeah. And I know you committed to this. I will also commit to it on my side, is that in terms of training, we'll put it out there. So I will put my 2 weeks block, what I'm going to be training for the 2 weeks. I'll put it out there on my Fighting 100 page. And Andrew, I know, where do you post your stuff?
So I'm on Strava, and then Karkloof 100 YouTube channel posts a very regular clip about my training. I won't put anything forward because it's not the type of runner I am. I think it will be interesting because we'll be able to see the training differences, and maybe some people will latch onto you and some people will latch onto me. But I'm intuitive around it. I feel my way through it. So like, my knees are a bit just a little sore, so I've just backed off in the last couple of days, and I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow.
I like those two different approaches. I love it. So I've got another little question here. So, hi guys, how well do you need to know the route, and do you need a GPS or tracking device or GPS for the whole 100 miler?
Yeah. So here one thing about the Karkloof 100 is we've gone to lengths to make the route accessible and easy to follow. And no, you don't need a GPS. You don't need any almost form of experience. We market what we feel is incredibly well. I think you can vouch for that, Shaun. And there's a lot of markers there. It's a very clear track. It's not like it's way in the mountains. Everything relatively close. You're never too far off an aid station or viewpoint or a point of access to the course. So yeah, we've gone to lengths to make it much more accessible, much more kind of runnable and obvious to follow. There's no navigation, and yeah, I think we improved that year on year on year. But it's definitely where we've tried to position the whole of Karkloof 100 is very accessible and no tricks. It's all laid out very well. The aid stations are very well stocked. They're on a regular basis. Yeah, you got to learn how to trail run. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, we aren't sending people out into just self-navigated, self-supported races here.
And I think what I've liked about the Karkloof, which is, I think, been a massive appeal for me, is it would be considered a fast track in terms of 100 miles. And, like if you equate it to Comrades Marathon, it's sort of like doing the up run plus a little bit more elevation. And that's like when you think of it like that, it's very doable to at least do the 50 mile. I mean, the 50 mile is definitely a doable. I think if you train for it, you will finish that just as much as you would finish the Comrades Marathon. But it's a fast track and a very runnable track.
Yeah, and the 50 mile is actually a descent because you're starting higher than you finish. And obviously, the 100 mile is actually an out and a back, which some people are like, oh, but that's running the same thing twice. But it has a lot of advantages. And I think most people who did really enjoy that fact about it. So, yeah, it is considered a runnable course as far as 100 miles goes and trail running goes. Not a ridiculous amount of elevation in it, but it's certainly not road running. And there is an adaptation there. It's not hectic. It's for the Karkloof 100. You can definitely do a lot of your training on the road and then just your more conditioning on trail and get used to the unevenness of the trail and picking your feet up perhaps a little bit higher. But yeah, it's not this hectic mountain technical trail at all.
Yeah, and then that's what I loved about it, is that whole thing about it's totally easy to train in the week on road. So in the week, we obviously most of us live in the suburbs. Unfortunately, we don't all have the trails on our back garden. Lucky. But on the weekends, then is to just go and either whether it's with a group or your events. I think a lot of your events are really well lined up. Like I was thinking of the Gaini Ultra. It's like perfectly lined up for the Karkloof 100 long run. I think I couldn't make it last year. I couldn't make it, and I sort of made my own one up because I couldn't get out there on the Sunday. But it was my long run weekend was your long run event. Yeah,
and that 75k there is designed exactly for the 100 mile preparation. Starts at 2 a.m, so it's giving you that night experience. And then there's the 50k, is perfect preparation for the 50 miler as your last run. And our calendar kind of builds up to it as our pinnacle race. And as you said, that's exactly how to train for it. Is you can get your mileage on the roads and easier, maybe your local trails during the week, the easier stuff, and then go and get out into something more technical. Even though it is quite a far course, still training in the hills and in the mountains always pays dividends over these ultra events. So I think, finding some good trails in the Drakensberg, in the Karkloof, it's always great to train. It's the best to train on the trail itself, or wherever you can, just to get some. There's a lot to be said for a lot of slow vertical movement when you're training for these races.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, so let's look at your training that you're going to do now for Karkloof 100. In your mind, like if you had to look at the next 4 months, what sort of mileage are you wanting to put in?
So I'm in a stage now where I'm putting in like 50, 60 kilometer weeks. So you're looking like 250, 300 Ks a month. And that's just almost like just to get going, build my mileage, lose that 5 kgs I've been talking about, and then start to ramp it up from there. I'll look for a block about probably 6 to 8 weeks out of 4 weeks, where in those 4 weeks, I'll try to put in 100K weeks 4 in a row. So that's kind of my big block, and then wind it down. So get my fitness up, get in a position to be able to put the block in, and then wind down to the race. And that came from an interesting conversation with Matt Dove on our Karkloof TV. I started a Sunday evening show there, and it's worth going back to look at Matt Dove's advice on that show in terms of that block and having that. See, a very interesting question coming through there from Frick.
You saw it as well. I saw you giggle as well. I think I'll let you answer that one because mine's probably a bit different to yours.
Like, I couldn't see the entire question, but it said something like,
question is,
how many beers
do you consume during training?
I thought he was actually asking it how many during the run, because I know Fricky is a fan of the odd beer on the course, which is not unheard of.
How many do you, Fricky? That's the question.
But he always frowns at me because I don't drink too many beers at all on the course, and even afterwards I prefer my milkshakes to the beers. They come a day later maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. I couldn't, if I touch a beer on the course, I'm over.
Yeah.
Even afterwards.
Surprising number of people do enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking of like what's that comrades guy used to stop halfway, used to have his beer. Arthur Newton used to sit in his seat there, and have his beer in his pipe, and then he'd carry on for the second half.
There we go. That's how it's done. There's a couple of guys who have a summit beer or something like that on the course.
So do you have any traditions that have formed so far in like the Karkloof 100? You know, like comrades, there's a bunch of traditions. I've got a little one in my head about it, but are there any specific like traditions that you've picked up?
Myself, traditions, running.
Well, I'm saying for the Karkloof 100 race now. So I mean, it's been 3 years. You've done for three. It's gone for 3 years. Are there any little traditions that have like crept in?
Sure. You know, they say you can't make traditions up, which is very true. Traditions, like, let's make up a tradition. Like, it doesn't work like that. Then it's not a tradition, is it? So you can't just make things up. Things have to creep in. I almost have to answer no. I think it's such 3 days still. We've only done 3, which hopefully we do many more. I think the way I see the race. What have I always done? I try to sleep the first night as the organizer. The first time I didn't. The second time I did. And the third time I didn't because it was so hot, and it was even hot that night. So we were working really hard from the word go to get water out there. But I think maybe that's one. If you know, although I'll be running this year, so I can't sleep. But if you're organizing, maybe to try and sleep the first night. But the answer is no, not yet.
I've actually got one for you.
Okay.
So race bib number 44 was the race bib that came last on the first Karkloof 100. The very next year, what's his name? Andrew, fast runner Andrew
Erasmus.
Andrew Erasmus. He had bib number 44, and I think he came second, if I'm not mistaken, second or third, year 2.
Yeah, he's had a good Karkloof running, yeah.
So that race number has been on the 2 opposite extremes of the events. Like race number 44 has either been like stone last. It'll be interesting to see if bib number 44 ran last year and what happened.
Yeah, I'll have a look.
It'll be an interesting one.
I'll have a look. So what has happened to bib number 44 then?
So bib number 44, I reckon, is like, I don't know, a special something. Or you could have a last place
either
prize.
A bogey or it's either
if the person finishes like in the so if they have race number 44 and they finish in the top half, they get like an automatic silver buckle or something like that. Or if they finish in the last half, something else. I don't know. Well, I'll think about it. But race number 44.
They'll keep in. They make themselves. They make themselves at the end of it.
Okay, so Karkloof 100, 25th of September. I'm in, you're in. Who else is in? Is the big question. So you need to commit now. I think that's the reality. Is I started training on Tuesday. So if you think you are behind, don't worry, I'm also behind. I know I did a little bit of training up front, but like the last 2 weeks, if I had to tell Claude, my coach, he'll be a little bit upset with me. I've sort of been chilling quite a bit, and I've sort of been running once or twice a week. So I've lost some serious fitness. But yeah, this week I'm on it. I'll post my training schedule as well up. And then the guys, they can follow you where, Andrew?
Yeah, as I said earlier, the best place to watch my progress is the Karkloof 100 YouTube channel or my Strava.
On your Strava. Are you going to create maybe a Karkloof group again this year?
On Strava, there is already a Karkloof group. So we'll reignite that, get that going. And then, yeah, as soon as the levels allow it, we'll get out on the course there and we'll invite people. You know, even if it's a little bit like a WhatsApp invite as opposed to, you know, a KZN TR emailer, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I think last year I failed at my silver buckle. So the whole mission of my videos was that silver buckle. So I think I'm going to, as much as I'm terrified, I think I need to try commit to that again this year.
Absolutely. No, I think if you do that, you'll beat me. But if you don't, I'll beat you.
Okay. So what you going for? 24 and a half hours there?
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe guys, we're gonna call it just now. And if you've got any more questions that you might have to us, either whether it's on Facebook or on this webinar, just pop them through. Ask us any questions, and then when I do post these videos, I will put some details. So I'll put the link to the Strava group that Andrew was talking about. I'll put the link through to the YouTube channel that the Karkloof 100 YouTube channel. So there's going to be plenty info for you guys to get involved and make this something that you can commit to. So any other words from you?
Awesome to get.
Sorry,
it'll be awesome to get this group going. And I say I'm really looking forward to the momentum of the group going. I think you go back to the beginning of the conversation. One thing that you pointed out was people have difficulty to motivation, train for something. And as a group, I feel we can probably find ways to come together and build that momentum. So with you and I continually posting and we're encouraging that group to come together and meet online here, you know, we'll start to grow this picture more and more.
Yeah. And I think what's been amazing about what I've seen in the trail community the last, not just the trail, I think the running community as a whole, is that we've stuck together and we've created goals and we've gone for those goals. And I think that's what this is about here, is for me particularly, it's about something solid that we can work towards together, whether it's a 50 mile or 100 mile. I know we've been talking a lot about the 100 mile here today, but and maybe we haven't spoken much about the 50 mile, but that in itself is a really big challenge for anyone. You know, it's a really great challenge, and there's enough time to work towards it. So yeah, I know you put the challenge out there. My answer is I'm in. Definitely, this is the thing we're going to go for the year. And yeah, I'll have to change my whole Facebook page, which was Chasing Bill. I can't chase Bill anymore. It's going to be called I'm going to change it actually to Chasing Booth. That's something.
There you go. Well,
so
I'm
going to change
the other way around.
I don't know, but I think I'll take that Bill Rowan photo and I'll cut a little your face out there and I'll put it there, and then we'll change the branding to Chasing Booth for the rest of the series.
I love it.
But cool, Andrew, shot for joining me, bud. I don't see any more questions.
Much for having me. Sorry, my connections played games there.
Absolutely fine. Yeah, and yeah, we'll chat again, and we'll chat some more. And I look forward to seeing any media or whatever does come out after this. But I'm definitely in from my side, and I know there are some other people that are rearing to go. I know I've had some other verbal commitments from people, so I think there'll be a bunch of us that get involved.
Fantastic.
Right, Andrew, thank you to everyone for joining us. Appreciate it. And yeah, we'll chat again next Wednesday.